25th of May 2016. And I'm going to get straight into it with is it a stand-up first? It is a stand-up first. And do we have Bradley here today?
Bradley's not here. Is Ben here?
No Ben.
Then it would be Chris Dickinson.
Hey. So I've done a few things this last week. I spent some time reviewing James's Streamstocks PR, which is looking good. I'm going to probably do another round on that at the end of the week, maybe today, and roughly defined as like the last half of the week. Doing some catching up on the zones proposal, just to wrap my head around it a bit, and looking at the streams read into proposal from Fyodor. And next is Colin.
Nothing fancy, just reviewing issues and pull requests, and fixed a couple bugs related to cluster and child process IPC stuff. Next is Evan.
Hey, yeah, I had a few comments on issues and pull requests, but not much this week. Next is Jeremiah.
Hello. I've spent most of my time continuing to investigate standard IO woes, potential fixes, and problems along the way, different platform things, and also have been having problems testing TDYs for those issues. Also done some general issue PR review and made a couple minor pull requests. Next is Fedor.
Hello, yeah. I think I have mostly done some code reviews and also opened a pull request with a proposal for read into that Chris just mentioned. That's kind of all for me. Next is James.
Yep, done some PR triage, did a little bit of docs work. Also kind of in the background working on some URL module refactoring to see if we can get some improved alignment with the URL standard. Having some issues getting that alignment without impacting performance, so I'm still kind of looking into it quite a bit more. So that's me. Next is Josh.
Yep, for me, I have scheduled a tracing or diagnostics working group meeting for next week, or working on getting that scheduled. And I'm continuing to work on a trace module. Next is Michael, if he's here.
He's here, but he's muted. I've unmuted him.
And Michael, you're on. Otherwise, Brian.
Let's skip to Ryan for now.
Okay, so mostly just reviewing PRs and issues for me this week. Nothing really much else. Next is Ali.
And helping with the V8 Inspector PR, and also starting to play with the dynamic FFI compiler within V8. Next is Alexis.
Okay, Alexis is having trouble unmuting.
Let me jump in.
Okay.
Alexis. So just I was fairly busy with some work with company work last week, so I didn't get a whole lot done. Did some reviewing. Got the Contextify backport into version 4 that we sort of lost track of. The miscellaneous build maintenance, including more ARM stuff with Raspberry Pis. And that's it for me. Seth Thompson. Oh, actually, Alexis, you got your audio sorted out? Nope, we'll come back to you then. Seth Thompson.
Hi, guys. Just following along on the Node Inspector work as well with Ali and Pavel on the Chrome DevTools team. Actually, last week was the Google I/O conference, and we gave a quick demo of functionality in the DevTools talk and the V8 talk. So I'm excited to talk about that today.
It was quite good. Congrats on this.
Okay, I think I'm next. I do think we've got Ben and Stephen Loomis have joined, so I don't know if they just want to tack them on at the end. But I onboarded a bunch of people: Brian English, Yuval Brick, Daniel Wang, and Bradley. I do want to make one note about how the onboarding went, which is that. Oh, Alexis, you got unmuted. Congratulations. Cool. Okay, so we'll go back to you right after I finish up, I guess. I onboarded Brian English in person because we happened to be in the same place at the same time on Saturday. And then I was going to onboard everybody else on Google Hangout, but the only person for whom it really worked was Yuval. So rescheduled with Fired Fox, Daniel Wang, rescheduled with him for last night on IRC. And that seemed to work perfectly fine. But if there's any concerns about, I mean, I would prefer to onboard people in a more personal way where there's voice involved and so on and so forth. But, rather than tangle with the Great Firewall of China, we just went to IRC, and I think that that's perfectly acceptable. But if anybody has concerns about that for some reason, please feel free to voice them. Been fixing a bug in child process exec. Mostly I've been just doing inadequate solutions that Brian White then comments on, and I fix them, and then eventually I get to a good solution, so you could say he actually did most of the work, but whatever. And also adding lots of YAML stuff to .md files, saying when APIs have been added. Next I guess is Alexis. We're going to go back, and then we'll go forward to Trevor from there.
Okay, so I've been working with my team on a few issues. One is the lack of support for cross-platform line endings in JSLint. Then we've been introducing portable line endings in console log, which is kind of an ambitious idea. We're just investigating if it's even worth considering. Then we're also porting all the core benchmarks to Windows. Investigating ABI issues with the Visual C++ compiler that have been affecting a few native modules. And then answering a few issues and PRs. That's all for me. Trevor will be next.
Been doing catching on pull requests that had needed to be reviewed. I've been doing some more investigation with async rep in terms of usage for the EP, so I can hammer a few things out there. That's it for me. I don't have the list.
Here's Steven. I seem to be halfway between muted and unmuted. Again. Not a lot new, just following on some tickets. Next is Ben.
Is this thing on?
It is.
Okay, excellent. So code reviews, of course. I fixed a couple of minor bugs. If you start Node with -harmony simd now, then simd types get pre-printed in the REPL, so that's very nice. Just same old, same old. Oh yeah, a couple of libuv bug fixes. That's about it for me.
Alexis, the benchmark window for Windows stuff. What was the state of that? I wasn't aware that they weren't good for Windows.
There were a few that are not working. HTTP, because they rely on WRK, which is a tool that's not ported on Windows, and child process, they just had some bugs. So yeah, the biggest one is the HTTP one, really, and there is a bit of controversy about replacing. Our proposed solution was to replace WRK with Apache Bench, but the results might not be exactly the same, even though they seem to be consistent. So we're still evaluating. I mean, the other option would be to make a fork of WRK using UBV.
Someone posted on that issue that had a HTTP benchmarker that worked on both Windows and other platforms that was very much like WRK, they said. So maybe that would work.
Yeah, that would be great. We're still tracking that issue. But was that based in Node.js though? Was the client written in Node?
Yeah, one of the issues. Wherever someone suggested to replace WRK with AB.
Right. Right. So if we use a Node.js client, we would be benchmarking both the client and the server at the same time, right? So it's not exactly the same as what we're doing now. We're only benchmarking the server.
They seem to indicate it was like a C++ thing like WRK, but it worked on cross-platform.
Okay, that's great. I'll check back on it.
Cool. Okay.
So to do Michael?
Hey, yeah, I just got back from China, and just kind of catching up on email and a bunch of legal stuff. I heard your comments about dealing with the firewall and whatnot. So now that we have a contributor in China, I would suggest kind of trying to get them up to date as quickly as possible so that they could actually onboard other people in China, because just with the time difference, it's hard enough. And there's just like, for communications and stuff, there's just a whole other set of tools to deal with. So if we could have somebody Chinese onboarding new Chinese committers, that would be ideal, I think. Yeah, everything has its own thing over there, so it's just a lot harder than working with any other country, even like Japan or Korea. So that's about it for me.
Okay. Review of previous meeting. Please holler if anything stands out as something we need to discuss as a follow-up. We reviewed ES modules stuff again, and that's an ongoing thing. I believe Jeremiah is up to speed with Bradley on that. There's still some continuation of that. We don't have Bradley this week. Is there anything you want to fill us in on, Jeremiah?
So what we're now investigating is how to deal with APM vendors or other developer, usually testing tooling that hooks into the module system to either wrap modules or similar things like that. And that is very hard to do with ES modules, and they were very much designed to not do that. But we kind of need that capability, so we're investigating that.
Okay. Next, we looked standard IO woes, and we will be getting to that again this week, so we'll jump over that one. Moving sync write stream to internal FS. I think we were going to go ahead and do that, deprecate it. And the graceful FS issue as well, we discussed. And I came up with a resolution for that, which I don't quite remember. I think it was putting it off until version 7 or something. Anyway, moving into today, we've got the V8 inspector pull request at the top of the list. That's issue number, or pull request number 6792. And Ali, this is yours, so take it away and let us know what you think, how you think we should frame this discussion.
All right, so as per the collaborator guide, any changes that are significant enough to have an impact to Node, they should be brought up at the CTC meeting. So that's why I added the CTC agenda label. So there's a healthy discussion on the pull request as well, and that can continue, but the CTC should weigh in on whether this is a direction that Node is interested in. And what is the goalpost that we need to achieve in order to get this landed? And in fact, actually, Rod posted a really good summary of the things we should consider. So some of the questions he posted. I'll just post a link to this in the chat here, and we can run through the issues that Rod mentioned in the order he mentioned it. So and any other issues that the CTC members want to bring up as well on this. So basically that's a discussion I think we should have. So overall, I mean, before I run through the list of issues that Rod raised, any general comments by anybody? Anybody objecting to this pull request, or any other comments? Okay, so the main concerns that I think Rod raised was, first of all, it's a rather large dependency, and actually there's two questions. It's large, and secondly, in a future V8 version, it's going to be subsumed into V8. So whether or not we should be carrying this dependency. And the way I look at this question is, it's a question of, if V8 is picking this up down the road anyway, the question is whether we want it now and whether we want V8 Inspector to be working with Node 6 or not. That's really the question. So because I mean, the size impact is going to come down the road anyway.
As a note, since it's probably going to be mostly the same code anyway, it's going to compress and get just fine, probably. So.
Okay, the other concern was WebSockets-based protocol. I think this has been discussed in the issue as well. And in fact, we did discuss it back in September as well, when the DevTools team originally proposed that they want to provide a way to inspect Node. So the question, as Rod asked, is: are we comfortable with a WebSockets-based protocol for debugging? It's not available to user space. It's only used internally.
It's Trevor that raised the initial concern here about using a protocol that Node doesn't support natively. So we can't even write a Node client to inspect it or talk it without pulling in a dependency. That was the concern there.
Yeah, and I think Ben did address it, that it's actually rather trivial to write a client without bringing in an additional dependency.
Well, I guess, okay, so I look at it kind of like this. The response was basically, oh, it's pretty much easy to write a protocol, like a script that'll handle that protocol. Well, then if it is, why don't we support it in Node? And with the existing debugger protocol, I mean, you need to write the parser and whatever, but it still just uses normal protocols that are supported, right? There's a difference between like API and protocol, right?
So one difference is that, well, good WebSocket libraries already exist, and two, the debugger, the inspector speaks a subset of WebSockets. I mean, it's a simplified version. So, yeah, I personally don't see a pressing need to expose that kind of thing in Node Core.
Are we going to have unit tests for it? I mean, how are we going to unit test it?
There are actually tests in the pull request.
In the 12,000 line one that has all the extras, not the commit that just hooks it into Node.
Not the other one.
Okay.
I have a quick question on this note. So if we were to go the route and say, well, we want to include a WebSocket protocol thing with this, that would probably be written in JavaScript like net and HTTPR mostly. But this is written in C++. Would we still have to maintain both things, or could it just all be in JavaScript then?
So in the future, if Node.js decides to have a WebSockets implementation, whatever that implementation is, we could make the inspector interoperability work on top of that implementation. So this is not going to be, this is just a subset of WebSockets that we needed to talk to the inspector.
Actually, I've got Pavel with me who authored a lot of this. He just wanted to add one thing here.
Yeah, hi, my name is Pavel. I was commenting on the pull request. One thing to add is that we need to be really careful with running JavaScript at the inspected target in the node that is being inspected, because debugger is going to debug and profile that running code. And what we've learned while working on Chrome is that the entire infrastructure, including transport, needs to be native to not stand in the debugger's way as you are debugging an inspected instance. So we need to be very careful about implementing any of the server-side WebSockets or anything at all in JavaScript, because it's going to become an inspected target. And we are going to see all kinds of interesting issues related to that.
Yeah. So my comment is true then, that even if we did support this, we'd have to have like 2 implementations of it, basically. I don't know, that makes it less palatable to me to have like an actual implementation for JavaScript.
Well, but we don't have a WebSockets proposal today. We don't even have a consensus on whether we will ever have WebSockets in core. So this seems arbitrary to me that we may do something weird in the future. So let's not do this at all. If anything, I mean, if WebSockets are to be implemented in core, this gives a good starting point, and it's an independent discussion whether they should be in JavaScript or C++. It's conceivable to me that they could be C++.
Yeah, just don't get too hung up on this in this particular item just now, because it's not like we don't need to resolve it now, but we do need to make sure the discussion plays out. So instead of just letting this go on forever, let's move on to the next thing.
All right. So the next thing was whether or not the with inspector compile time flag is the right way to go about this. I think it's actually fine, because it allows us, it provides an easy way for people to test it out without, I mean, the current state is that there's a pull request. It's harder for people to pick up the master branch, apply the pull request on top of it, and then they can play with this. With inspector makes it easier. I don't see a lot of downsides, but feel free to argue.
But what are the upsides? So if we were to go without a flag and just have it default, what are the risks and what are the costs of doing that?
So the thing is, we would like to get more testing in real world done with this. I mean, there's ergonomics that can be improved. User experience can be improved. So I don't think we want to enable it by default or require that it be perfect before we can get some field testing done on this.
Right, but I think a question is like, why wouldn't it be a runtime flag like the current debugger is? Because like the current debugger, you still need to run a runtime flag for it, but like it doesn't like always run. But you don't need to like compile Node specifically to get it.
So I think that the one thing that's missing at the moment, we did add SmartOS support as well, so I think it should work with SmartOS, but Windows is pending at this point. So I think at some point in the future, near future, we can turn it on by default, but this allows us to interoperate and collaborate better until even Windows support is enabled and other features are added.
It does seem like the compile time support is a little safer for now, so that we don't have it in the production distributions and stuff in the meantime.
So essentially, we're thinking of this as similar to async wrap, which is that it's available but not officially supported. It's something that we're still perfecting in the code base, and you shouldn't expect it to be finalized as it is.
Lee, what is your expected timeline for Windows support?
I think I think we should be able to get to it pretty soon. We got some of the basic things ironed out, and we got it working on Windows once. But I mean, we'll have to get it through the CI. I'd be happy to drop the flag if people think that's a good idea. But right now, I think the Windows will not pass in the CI if we drop the flag, and we haven't had the chance to go debug that. It's not going to be difficult. We're not far away from it, but so either way, getting it merged would make it easier to get help from other people looking at Windows specific issues too.
Yeah, I would actually say we probably shouldn't merge it till we have Windows support, just so that people running Windows won't be misled.
I would tend to agree.
It's such a big
Yeah, I
feature
don't think
that
I agree with that. I mean, we can just document the fact that it doesn't quite work on Windows yet. And for the CI, if necessary, we can always blacklist the tests. So.
Would there be a chance if we did have this enabled by default? What would be the potential impact on, say, the Chakra work if it went downstream to that? I have to assume that that's.
Okay, so you were at the VM Summit thing here, right? And I remember them saying that they commented to Ali how they had the debugger mostly working, and then Ali responded or asked in response whether they had live code editing working, and they said they hadn't. But as far as I know, this doesn't enable live code editing in Node either, does it?
Ali, you're muted. Ali wrote that it did in his first post.
Oh, okay. So that would be a gap between what Chakra has already done and what this introduces. I think that's the one feature they mentioned that they hadn't completed. Everything else, though, they said they were able to consume the protocol and do all that stuff.
You can't live edit core with this, though, can you?
I haven't tested that. I'm not sure. Pavel, do you know?
I think it should work.
Yeah, I believe you can.
Question for you guys. So V8 Inspector right now is a separate component. Is there for other engines like Chakra or Spider Node and those efforts, would it be possible to use it as a debug bridge and independent of the VMs behind it? Meaning keep.
The API itself anybody can use, and yeah, like the Chakra team and the VM Summit said that they had basically built something on top of it, and I think they wanted to use it inside Visual Studio for their debugger that way.
So the idea behind the V8 Inspector API, and it's Pavel speaking, is that it becomes the V8's debugging API. And that's the point of standardization for us. That's the point where multiple clients from various vendors are talking to the same kind of an API. And what you are saying is reusing V8 Inspector on top of other engines would mean existence of another layer of APIs, a lower level API, that currently is represented by V8 Debug and its mirrors. But that's something that V8 is going away from in favor of V8 Inspector.
Right, so this is something that Chakra could shim, like they shim existing V8 APIs.
Exactly.
But if we wanted to support multiple engines in a generic way, that this is something that we would have to deal with and provide kind of at least a stable API that all the other engines can implement.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, what Alexis brings up. We in the same way as the other V8 APIs, the more stable the Chrome debugging protocol is, the better for all of us. Ali, do you know, or Pavel, like what your plans are for future changes to it?
Well, we can look retrospectively into how debugging protocol was defined and how it evolved over the years. It was originally introduced in 2010, and we haven't broken the backwards compatibility since then for the runtime debugging and other domains. So we are pretty optimistic in our abilities to keep it going this way and only add capabilities in a backwards compatible manner there.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, fair enough. If it stays compatible at the protocol level and there is no API, then probably we won't have the same issues that we had with the making changes in the V8 API.
Okay, moving on.
Is there any plan? Is there any plan to combine this with like the tracing API, or are those two always remain separate?
Those are, I mean, tracing. Well, trace event is a separate API for tracing, and they aren't really related. Although DevTools has a mechanism of opening files produced by trace event. So, but I'll let Pavel chime in as well.
Yeah, the way it works in Chrome, for example, is that the protocol exposes several domains, and the ones we think are applicable to Node are runtime, debugging, profiler, and heap profiler, with console following up. Tracing is yet another domain in Chrome, and the way you control tracing is you do the tracing, you issue a tracing start command and tracing stop command, and you get results and you process them. So as far as the automation is concerned and controlling things over the same wire, remote debugging protocol is the official channel into the tracing for the automation purposes. It is slightly orthogonal to the trace event infrastructure and the tracing controller that gathers the trace, but those go hand in hand in Chrome, and it only makes sense for them to continue going hand in hand with Node as well.
Okay, we need to move this forward. So most of this discussion could happen on the issue. What else is there you'd like to discuss at this level? Ali, do you want to skip through the other things I added?
So I guess the question in a nutshell is, I mean, we go through the code reviews and so we can go through the code reviews. Are there objections to landing this at a CTC level?
It seems not. It seems like there's no strong feelings against it. So it sounds like it's mainly a process of stepping through the individual reviews. The other questions I had were fairly easy, I think, to resolve in that thread. The one that probably is worth discussing is the Chrome part of the URL. There was a user in there that was raising that as a concern. I didn't see any collaborators actually raising that as a concern, but does anyone here have concerns about having Chrome as part of the URL, given that this could be, will be used by other debuggers?
Yes. We should probably be our own URL. Like, why would we expose a Chrome URL from it? That doesn't even make sense.
So well, how would that work? Basically, what does the user do with that URL?
The URL would be the same. It's just not a Chrome URL. It doesn't start with Chrome. It starts with like Node Inspector or something.
Why would it matter? How is it better? You mean it's vendor neutral, but that doesn't matter because at the end of the day you're going to paste it into Chrome's URL bar. So I of course mean the address
Assuming
bar.
you're using a Chrome debugger.
Okay, fair
And
point.
if that's not going to be an option, like this is not very like I don't know, friendly to our community and stuff, right? Who love making tools.
No, so okay, let me elaborate. So the thing is, I think I'm actually okay with if Node core thinks this should be no URL at all. I mean, that can work too. I think at this point, the only way users will get this working is by pasting that that URL in a Chrome browser. I think it's easier for users to get started with this if it's a Chrome URL.
Wait, are you saying that Chrome requires that part of the URL to work?
I can respond to that, and I actually pasted a pretty extensive response in the thread. Formally, we don't need any URL, so we can just run node inspect, and it will open the port, and that port will listen to incoming connections. And just with that, Visual Studio Code or Chrome DevTools or any other client will be able to connect. There's no other information required to establish the connection. In order for Chrome to discover Node, you would need to restart Chrome with a special command line flag, which is optional. Now, what currently is being done, we just paste the convenience URL into the prompt so that the user could copy and paste it into the browser. The Chrome part of the URL is Chrome specific because it enters, it brings Chrome into this sort of a DevTools mode that we need for frontend to operate. But this is the implementation detail. This whole purpose of this URL being pasted in the console is the ergonomics and convenience. And this is entirely up to you whether you want it or not. And we will work with just Node Inspect. There's no issue. But I think it will be more welcoming to the users and more engaging for the users to be able to discover it in such a friendly manner, where it's just a copy and paste away. But that's your decision to make.
So have you guys thought about, like, if you guys use Chrome-DevTools to indicate something to the browser, if that was a more standardized or documented scheme, like maybe other tools could use it too. Maybe if we had to go that route, like CDP:// and so it could be more generic.
We are working on various things there. We have a discovery over USB that works. We have MDNS-based discovery working, and we have a raw TCP discovery working, but it needs this additional command line flag. We haven't standardized on any of the schemas on top of that. That would be interesting to look into, but that could be done incrementally. There's nothing that we would have for it at this point.
I think, and this is Seth again, just to chime in, really the printing of the URL is probably just an ergonomics thing that can be decided probably independently of landing via inspector. It works without the URL. Currently, the URL is the easiest way for the user to actually test this. If another debugger wants to support the protocol, they could come up with their own schema. But I think that's something to determine at the sort of node CLI level, not necessarily the level of this module and this capability.
Yeah,
I think I agree. Yeah, this is mainly about printing a message, isn't it? So we can change this later on if need be, and perhaps this grows. The message grows. If you want to use Chrome DevTools, then do this. If you want to use WebStorm, do this. Whatever. So yeah, let's take it back to the issue. The Semver major versus Semver minor is an interesting one. Is there any thoughts on that here? Like, is there anyone that thinks this is a Semver major?
No, I think it's Semver minor. I mean, it's additive, so minor it should be.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if anyone thinks otherwise, then you should raise that in the issue now, because it's currently labeled as Semver minor, and that's how it'll go in. Unless anyone sees anything that might be breaking. Let's move on. I've got a hard stop at top of the hour, so I need to get going as well. The next item is we need to take some minutes, by the way. If anyone would like to start typing some things in there. Standard IO woes. Jeremiah, where are we at with this?
I've actually got to run, but thanks, guys. And we'll continue discussions on the GitHub pull request.
Thank you.
So where we're at, I haven't really done much with the flushing on exit at the current time. I think we're still discussing with libuv how to do that. Ben might have a better idea, or anyone else that was involved in that conversation. I forget who. Currently, I have a PR up to make TDYs blocking on OS X as a first step, because that is the major problem, and then I can go investigating whether that's viable for other platforms. And that brings the behavior back to its pre v6 state. And whether or not that's theoretically the correct behavior on OS X platforms, it does not behave well if it's not blocking because the buffer size is so small. So at the current time, so I should probably just make sure everyone's okay with that, because not really many people have actually reviewed that PR, even though I've tried to get review on it. I have been working on a test, but I can't get the test runner to run correctly on the CI with it, even though it passes locally and on my Linux box. And that has to do with some weirdness with making the test runner fake a TDY through Python. But is everyone okay with the approach of making it blocking on OS X? Is there any concerns I need to alleviate still?
Well, okay, how to put this? The obvious caveat, of course, is that putting it into blocking mode, if you're piping to another process, for example, and that process is very slow, then Node will block until the pipe buffer drains again, flushes again.
This isn't for pipes, though. This is only for TDYs. It's only to your terminal.
Oh,
Unless your pipe is emulating a TDY, in which case all bets are off.
Right, okay, yeah, so I see that it's changed only in TTY.js. Okay, well, I can still think of a few edge cases where it will act, wonky, but I guess.
Will it act worse than the current behavior, though? Because Mac has always been blocking up until this point, and there was not significant issues. And that was because libuv had some other bugs in it that caused it to still be blocking even when we thought it might not be. But the current behavior causes pretty bad issues with CLIs.
Yeah, okay, so I agree that turning it into blocking mode again won't be really a regression because of, well, past issue. Well, the pull request doesn't make me joyous and happy, but all things considered, I guess it's okay.
It's a way to make progress, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, the step after this is to investigate how this sort of change might affect things on Linux platforms, and also dive deeper into how Windows even functions at this point, since there seems to be mixed understandings of that. But that's going to take quite a bit of time.
Yeah, as a stopgap to make progress, I think I'm supportive of this, as long as all the other issues that I'm not over are taken care of. But it seems to me like this is a good way forward. Particularly given that we haven't made much other progress. Well, we have, but it's like this thing is going on, so let's give users something to help them out. Any other comments on Standard.io woes?
Well, for the long-term,
go ahead.
Yeah, for the long-term solution, I mean, I would echo what Bert suggested, that we have separate write sync implementation, and then we make console log use that. So the console log would always be blocking, but any other stream access wouldn't have to be.
Right.
But the obvious problem with that is if the reader is very slow, then Node is going to block. I mean, that's the reason why we changed this back in, I think, 05, because it was simply too slow at times.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to have only ever been changed as a whole, and not there wasn't discretion given between if it's going to a terminal or a pipe.
Come again?
It's so I think, as far as I understand, past discussions of it and past changes of it were only changing the behavior of both pipes and TDYs, and not TDYs and pipes separately. And that seems to be the current issue. There doesn't seem to be any issue with doing async writes to pipes, except on platforms where that may not work.
Well, the issue right now with pipes is if data is queued up and you exit, then you lose that data. I infer that's not what you're talking about.
I'm talking about the interleaving of standard IO and standard error, right? Which is a specifically terminal problem. The other problem could still possibly be worked around by having Node flush everything at the end, although that may not be easy.
Right, okay, yeah, so interleaving is an issue and always has been. I posted a comment today where I outlined a possible solution on how to address that. It will require some minor changes to libuv to make certain things work with pipes on Windows. But once that is working, well, I think we should be able to fix both issues in one go.
Okay. Like, how many weeks is that going to take to get to Node, though?
Hard to say, because I'm more or less coding blind here.
Right.
I don't really use Windows, so yeah, I'm just how do you call it? Shotgun approach, scatter, trial and error. That's probably the right word for it.
Right.
Well, if we come up with a good architecture that's valid cross-platform, we could help with the Windows implementation, of course.
Yeah, so it currently hinges on a relatively small thing, and that is that so libuv has this API called UV try write, which well, it basically tries to write, and if it doesn't, it gives you an error code. It doesn't queue up the request, and so it's basically a synchronous write for asynchronous handles. So far, so good. Problem is, it doesn't work for pipes on Windows. It hasn't been implemented yet, so I had to go at it today. But well, it didn't turn out so pretty. If
for
you
pipes on Windows, we do have the UV set blocking that's been implemented, right?
Yeah, okay, so the thing here is that we want to do a UV try write, and if the write doesn't go through because there's already pending data or whatever, then we queue it up on the Node side, and when Node exits, then we turn on blocking mode and flush any pending data.
Okay, so you want, this is kind of an optimization, or you want to avoid waiting, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, right now we have a code path that will just, on Windows pipes, there's a code path that will queue it onto a thread pool and then just wait for the result right there.
Yeah, right. So yeah,
I have a question.
You have a question, Fleur?
Yeah, right. So suppose we would use UV try, right? And how would we figure out when to call it again? Because right now there is no notification for write
Oh, right. Yeah. So
availability.
there's a poor man's way to implement poll for pipe handles, and that is that you queue a zero length. You queue a zero length write, and once you get a callback for that, you know that it's okay to write again.
Okay.
It's not pretty, but hey, it works.
Okay, I guess so. Oh, it's probably going to be a bit awful on OS X because of select hacks that we have there, but whenever, okay, whatever.
I think the select hack was fixed though, wasn't it?
Was it? I believe it's
Can we
still
take this back?
used.
Take this back to GitHub for now. I think the meeting's getting pretty long here. But if everyone who's participating in the conversation could make sure that you could just tune in on GitHub to help drive this forward to an optimal place, that would be really good.
Okay.
Don't just leave Jeremiah abandoned at this.
Yeah, so it sounds like everyone's okay with my temporary approach. I'm not sure how testing this is actually going to go or getting it on the CI. So if I get help with that, that would be great. Otherwise, I'm not sure it's going to, I don't know, be testable.
This would be a good candidate for some release candidates for the next version 6. Then let's put out an RC1 and ask people to try it out, particularly people who are experiencing problems with this.
Okay. Yeah, I can do an RC this week then and schedule the release for next week instead. See if we can get the problems fixed in the meantime with testing. Which again is specifically with the CI and passes locally.
Yeah, one more suggestion. I saw that there are like 5 different issues that discuss kind of the same topic. It might be helpful to consolidate those.
Agreed. Yeah, let's close some issues and point them to the one place. Jeremiah,
I'm not really sure that's possible at this point. So there's an actual issue for it. There's a libuv issue for the flushing set part, and then there are 3 pull requests of mine. One is a pull request for flushing on exit, which we are discussing more in the libuv thread, but the node parts are in that PR. There's a PR for blocking on all platforms, which I still need to investigate, and then there's my temporary fix for OS X.
Could we have a like a meta issue that has them all listed in a checklist, and so we get that little progress bar thing, and they're all linked together in that way?
Sure, I can close the old issue for it and open a new one then.
And then it's just something we can point to when we're waving our hands at this thing that's going on. Okay, so I to drop, but we have QA on the Q&A on the agenda. Jeremiah, maybe if you'd like to take over and handle any Q&A that comes in. Also, just a private section at the end if there's anyone talk about anything privately. But for now, I have to go. So, Jeremiah, is that okay if I hand over to you?
Yep. So for anyone watching the live stream, if you have questions, we'll be live for a few minutes still. If you'd like to post those in the chat on the YouTube feed or in Node Dev on Freenode IRC, we'll be live for a couple minutes to still answer any of those. Did anyone else have anything else to bring up in the meantime during the public section?
Why not?
Okay, well, I'm not sure we're gonna get anything. I think my comment is still carried over from last time in the YouTube chat, so I think we can call it. I think we might be going to a private meeting to get a brief update, but yeah. So thanks everyone who watched, and we'll probably be around next week again, as usual.
Thanks, everyone.